Today we are going to second chapter, that utility analyze. In this chapter we have to discuss lot of things. We will start this chapter with the meaning of utility. In short, in this second chapter we have to discuss the meaning of utility, then the features of utility, then types of utility we have to handle in this second chapter, and the most important, we have to discuss the law of diminishing marginal utility with assumptions and exceptions. But before to discuss the law of diminishing marginal utility, we must know the meaning of utility. So in this video lecture, first we have to discuss the meaning of utility and the features of utility. So generally we consider that the utility means usefulness, but in economics, utility, it means not usefulness. In fact, utility, it means it's a power of commodity, it's a capacity of commodity to satisfy human want. In short, it's a want satisfying power of commodity. So what I said, in economics, utility means it's a power or it's a capacity of commodity to satisfy human want. So for example, suppose I want to write some matter on blackboard. Okay, what I am saying, suppose I want to write some matter on blackboard. So in which things I will find utility? Obviously in chalk, because chalk has the power or capacity to satisfy my want. Then for example, suppose I want to write an application. So obviously I will find utility in pen or paper, because pen and the paper has the power to satisfy my want. Okay. Then for example, suppose if someone is very hungry, so he will find utility in food, because food has the power to satisfy the wish or want of hunger. If someone is very thirsty, then he will find utility into a glass of water, because water has the power to satisfy the wish of thirsty person. Okay. Suppose for example, if you want to charge your cell phone, so obviously you will find utility into charger, because charger has the power to satisfy your want. Okay. So what I said, utility means it's a just capacity or it's a power of commodity to satisfy human want. Okay. When we handle some features of utility, that time we will get clear meaning of utility. Okay. The first character or first feature of utility, that it's a subjective or it's a psychological term. So utility, it's a subjective term. It means it differs from person to person. Basically utility related to consumer mental attitude and the experience regarding given commodity. It's a subjective term or it's a psychological term. It means the utility differs from person to person. It means, for example, the utility of same product, it cannot be same for all individuals. There are so many examples we can discuss here. So firstly, what I said, it's a differs from subject to subject. It means the utility of a particular product, it is not same for all individuals because of differences in taste, habit, preference, attitude, habit, etc. of the people, then also likes and dislike, etc. of the people. So for example, meat, it means chicken, mutton, does have utility to the non-vegetarian person, but not to the pure vegetarian person. Then chalk has greater utility to the teacher than student. Then utility of book is greater for an educated person rather than illiterate person. Then toys have greater utility to the children rather than adult person. Then cigarettes also possess greater utility to the smoker rather than non-smoker. Alcohol also possesses greater utility to the drunkard rather than non-drunkard. So utility differs from person to person. So in short, the utility of a particular product, it is not same for all individuals. It is differs from person to person because the differences in like, dislike, then habit, taste, preference, attitude, etc. of the people. Then the second character of utility, it's a relative concept. So utility, it's a relative concept, it's related to time or place. It also differs time to time or place to place. So same commodity may have different utility at different time or different places. So what I said, the utility, it's a relative term, it differs from time to time or place to place. For example, woolen cloth possess greater utility in colder place rather than warm place. So it differs from place to place. It means woolen clothes possess greater utility in a colder place like Jammu Kashmir, but it possesses less or zero or negative utility in warm places like Mumbai, Rajasthan, etc. So utility of particular product, it differs from place to place. Then sea sand possess greater utility near construction area rather than the seashore. Then chalk possess greater utility at the place of classroom rather than staff room. So it differs from place to place. Then also utility differs from time to time. For example, umbrella possess greater utility at the time of rainy season. Then books possess greater utility at the time of exam. Then blood also possess higher utility at the time of accident rather than normal case. Then air condition, fan, cooler possess greater utility at the time of summer than winter. So it differs from place to place or it differs from time to time. So it means it's a relative term. Then the third main character of utility, that it's ethically neutral. It means utility has no moral consideration. It is ethically neutral. So concept of utility has no ethical consideration. It is morally neutral. It means a commodity which possesses utility, it may satisfy any want. It does not make any difference between good or bad, moral or immoral, desirable or undesirable, or what is right or what is wrong. So it is completely ethically neutral. It does not make any difference between good or bad. For example, knife possesses greater utility into the hand of housewife to cut vegetables, and the same knife possesses higher utility into the hand of killer to kill someone. So it never makes difference between good or bad. So in short, it's ethically neutral. Then the next concept that we have to next feature that we have to discuss, utility, it's a different from usefulness. So utility, it's a different from usefulness. It means certain products have utility but they are not usefulness. So initially stage, what I said, utility, it means it's a just power or it's a capacity of commodity to satisfy human want, but the usefulness, it means it's a amount of benefit that actually received by consumer by consuming product. So utility means what I said, it's a power of commodity to satisfy human want, and the usefulness means it's the benefit that actually received by person or consumer by consuming product. So there are certain products possess utility but they are not useful. So for example, narcotics such as drugs, cocaine, such products possess higher utility to those who uses such product to get rid of tension or stress. Alcohol possesses greater utility to the drunkard, but the consumption of alcohol, drugs, it's completely harmful. It affects health as well as wealth. They are not useful. The consumer never get any benefit by consuming such product, that alcohol, cigarette. Cigarette also possesses greater utility to the smoker, but there is no use of cigarette to any person. In fact, it affects the health and the wealth. So utility and the usefulness both are different. Utility, it's a just power of commodity to satisfy human want. And the usefulness, it means the benefit, the amount of benefit which is actually received by person by consuming the product. So smokers get utility into the cigarette because cigarette has the power to satisfy the want of smoker, but there is no use of cigarette. Okay. Then the next feature we have to discuss, it's a different from pleasure. So utility and the pleasure both are different term. So a commodity may purchase utility, or commodity may have utility, but its consumption may not give any pleasure. What I am saying, a certain product purchases greater utility, but the consumption of such product never gives any pleasure. So already I have said that the utility means it's a just power or it's a capacity of commodity to satisfy human want, and the pleasure means the happiness that received by consumer after consumption. So certain product purchase utility, but the consumption of such product never gives any pleasure. For example, an injection gives greater utility to the patient, but the consumption of injection, it never gives any kind of pleasure to the patient. Then bitter medicines also purchase utility to the patient, because the injection and the bitter medicines have the capacity to fulfill the wish or want of patient, but the consumption of injection and the bitter medicine never gives any pleasure to the patient. Okay. So utility and the pleasure both are different, and the most important, utility, it's a different from satisfaction. Generally we consider that the utility, it means satisfaction, but in reality or in economics, utility and the satisfaction both are different concept. Already we had discussed the utility, it means it's a just capacity and it's a power of commodity to satisfy human want. In short, it's a want satisfying power of commodity. And the satisfaction means it's a happiness. Okay, so satisfaction, first of all, utility and satisfaction both are interrelated, but they are not same. The satisfaction, it's a just feeling. Satisfaction, it's a just feeling of happiness that actually realized by consumer by consuming product. Okay, what I am saying, the satisfaction, it's a actual feeling that realized by the consumer by consuming product. So utility and the satisfaction both are interrelated, but in economics they are not same. So in short, the utility, it's just related to the commodity. Utility, it's just related to the commodity, whereas satisfaction, it's the actual experience that received by consumer. Utility, it's just related to the commodity, whereas the satisfaction, it's the actual experience that realized by the consumer. Then utility, it's a starting point of consumption. What I am saying, utility, it's a starting point of consumption, whereas satisfaction, it's the end result of consumption. Basically utility comes before consumption, but the satisfaction comes after consumption. Okay, what I am saying, utility comes before consumption, but the satisfaction comes after consumption. For example, suppose if I am very thirsty, so what I want, obviously I want to consume a glass of water, because a glass of water has the power to satisfy my want. So before consumption, a glass of water, I am finding utility, because a glass of water has the power to satisfy my want. So utility comes before consumption, but as I consume a glass of water, after drinking a glass of water, it means at the end of result I get satisfaction. Okay. So utility and the satisfaction both are different. Utility comes before consumption and the satisfaction comes after consumption. जैसे ही glass of water मैं consume कर रहा हूँ या finish हो रहा है, then I get satisfaction. But before consumption, a glass of water, I am just finding utility. But after consumption, a glass of water, I realize satisfaction. So utility comes before consumption and the satisfaction comes after consumption. Okay. Okay. So utility, it's just related with the commodity, and the satisfaction, it's the actual experience that received or realized by the consumer by consuming product. So utility is the starting point of consumption, and the satisfaction is the end result of consumption. Then the next point we have to discuss, cardinal measurement. It means the numerical measurement. So not easily measurable. Utility, it's not easily measurable because it's a psychological term. So utility, it's a psychological concept. It is just feeling that actually received by consuming product. So utility, it's invisible, it's intangible. No one can see utility or no one can touch utility. It's invisible or it's intangible. So it is very difficult to measure utility in numerical terms. Even the great economics Alfred Marshall assumed that utility can be measured in cardinal numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on. He assumed utility can be measured in cardinal numbers while explanation of law of diminishing marginal utility. But in reality, it is very difficult to measure utility in cardinal numbers. So that we will discuss later why Alfred Marshall assumed utility can be measured, why Alfred Marshall assumed that utility can be measured in cardinal numbers, that we will discuss later. Okay? But in reality, it is difficult to measure utility in cardinal numbers because it's invisible, it's intangible, it's just psychological term, it's just experience that actually received by person while consuming product. Then the next character of utility, that it depends upon intensity of want. So utility of commodity depends upon intensity or urgency of want. If the more urgency of want, the greater is the utility, and the vice versa. So for example, the utility of food is greater at the time of if the person is very hungry. Then the utility of blood is also greater at the time of accident. So higher the urgency, higher would be utility, and the lower urgency, lower would be utility. So it depends upon intensity of want. The best example, for example, notes or textbook possess greater utility at the time of exam, because at the time of exam students find higher intensity into the notes of books, but after the exam there is no or less or negative utility into the textbook. So it depends upon intensity of want. Then the next feature we have to discuss, utility is multi-purpose. So utility, it's a multi-purpose. It means there are certain products possess multi-purpose utility. For example, sugar. We can use sugar to satisfy several wants. We can use sugar to make tea. We can use sugar to make coffee. Then also to make sweet. Then to make medicines. Then also we can use sugar to make juice. So it means the sugar possess utility, but it's a multi-purpose. It means the same product can satisfy several wants. Then electricity also possess multi-purpose utility. It means we can use electricity to satisfy several wants. We can use electricity to operate fan, to operate television, to operate fridge, to operate air condition, and so on. So utility is a multi-purpose. Then the next feature of utility is intangible. It means we cannot touch the utility, we cannot see the utility, because it's a just psychological term that already we have discussed. So it's intangible because it has no physical existence. It's a just experience that actually received by consumer while consuming product. So it has no physical existence, and therefore it's intangible. We cannot touch the utility or we cannot see the utility. Then the last feature of utility, that it's the basis of demand. So a person would purchase or demand commodity if it gives utility. So it's a basis of demand. It means we find utility in different kinds of product, and therefore we demand commodity. For example, smokers demand for cigarette because smokers find utility into the cigarette. Then drunkards demand for alcohol because drunkards find utility into the alcohol. Then students demand for books, notebooks, pen because they find utility in all these products. So in short, the utility is the basis of demand. We demand for product because we find the utility in product. So it's the basis of demand. So these are the 11 main features of utility. Then we have to discuss the types of utility that we will discuss in next lecture. Thank you very much.